And in lieu of time and courtesy to everyone, I know it's been a long evening, that I'm Chantel Bynum with Wells Fargo and been a part of the Made Men since it came to Charlotte. So very excited to continue to support it, this endeavor. This is our second session this evening of our three for the month of December. So of course I said, earlier, Ms. Bay, nice to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you for the invite.
Oh, thank you for coming. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, but we are going to follow the same format, muting lines. Reggie will speak, and I think most of the people that were on the previous call are on this call as well. But we look forward to some great dialogue. The dialogue lasted for 2 hours last time, but I cannot stay on with y'all till 10 this time. Let me just tell you. However, let's I don't know where Mr. Singleton went to, but we do want to. I'll flip it over to you, Cecil, until there he is. Hello.
I didn't realize I was not on.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. But I'm going to turn it over to Reggie since we've got some of the same folks and we know the format, and we'll go to you next.
Hotep and greetings, fam. How y'all doing today? It's an honor to be before you. And my name is Baba Reggie Singleton. I'm a public health strategist and a founder of the executive director of the Males Place program. And honored to be here. And I want to give you a slight overview of the Made Man. And the Made Man was created by Dr. Kai Dele. And she has provided incredible leadership on a local, regional, national, and international level to pull some of the most brilliant minds of Black men around the world to solve problems that persist in our communities and to help in our development. And so there are over 2,000 of them around the world. And I'm honored to be a member of it. And what we're going to do before we do a round robin and allow each of our distinguished think tank members to introduce themselves, we're honored to have Sister Isis Bay. We'll do a full introduction of her in a minute. And I want to make sure that I get the title of our discussion tonight. And that is going to be on mask and mental health. And certainly Mama Bay can take that wherever she wants. She's a brilliant young lady, and we're honored to have her on this. But before we do the introductions, let's let me have my fellow comrade and fellow chair, Brother Cecil Burrow, introduce himself, and then we will do again a round robin and have everyone from our distinguished panel, from our dream team in Charlotte here, some of our best and brightest minds, introduce themselves. Okay, Brother Cecil.
Thank you, Reggie. So Cecil Burrows is my name. I'm a senior vice president at Wells Fargo Bank. I oversee credit relationships into certain lines of business. My team's responsible for that. I'm also the CEO of a men's mentorship fellowship group tied in with personal etiquette style called the Benedict Society. We focus in on supporting men as they work to make an impactful statement in whatever walk of life that they're trying to achieve. So I'm really excited to be here and honored to be here. I'm a part of the Made Men Foundation organization, working with Dr. Delay, Reggie, Chantel Bynum as well, and others, as we try to ensure that we support the mentorship of young men in and around the Charlotte market as well. I'll go ahead and kick it over to Kim Caldwell to introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kim Caldwell with Mecklenburg County Public Health. I'm also a public health strategist. I get to focus in the area of priority populations with emphasis on tobacco prevention and control. So all things policy as it relates to priority populations, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Mr. Carruthers.
Will Carruthers, I'm Senior Vice President, Senior Finance Manager at Bank of America, working with several lines of business. Relocated back to Charlotte about 2 years ago, so looking to get back engaged with the city. Charlotte holds a special place in my heart. See, so I don't even think you know this. My family has lived in Charlotte. We can trace our roots back to the Carruthers Plantation. That's actually what you now call Whitehall. So
Mm.
roots run deep in the city, although I was raised in New York City, but did spend a lot of time in Charlotte growing up.
Wow.
Great
Sounds
bit of
like you could go pour libations for your family out here.
Exactly.
Water.
Oh, well, I'll reintroduce myself. Chantel Bynum with Wells Fargo. I've been working a part of the. I convinced Kai to bring the Made Men to Charlotte. Actually, an unexpected treat to learn about what her organization was doing, and so I would consider myself primarily outside of the company a community relationship builder, working in a big capacity with so many different infrastructures within our community. And just very excited to talk about this particular topic, and looking forward to us having some great dialogue this evening.
And the name of your organization, Chantel?
I said
The
Wells
interview
Fargo.
perspective?
Oh, well,
No,
you see, he's put me on the spot. Stop. But actually, I am starting an organization, and it's going to be called Christopher Ray. And it's going to entail quite a few things. Still ironing out those details. I didn't talk about that earlier, but he's put me on the spot now. So hope to really continue to have an impact in the Charlotte market.
Reggie.
Okay, thank you so much. And now for our much awaited speaker for tonight. I had the great pleasure of meeting Mama Bay, Sister Isis Bay, several years ago when she was with Stonewall Jackson, and we had great conversations back then. And we've worked together, and we're going to work together even more now. I am so impressed with this young lady. She's got she'll go over some of her credentials with you. She has her own mental health facility. It is called Holistic Health. Oh, I'm sorry. It's called Harmony Health. It's called Harmony Health. And I've seen her brilliant work, how she has used for treatment and cathartic purposes to help people with mental health through gardening and agriculture, and infusing that for therapeutic purposes. And her work with this Ubuntu project, she's I am because we are, and because we are, I am. I just such strong admiration for and respect for. And so when we were thinking about potential people to bring on, obviously she was at the top of my list. So I'm honored to have Mama Bay, Sister Isis Bay. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm honored, and Baba Reggie knows I'm definitely grassroots. I often say, I talk about being multilingual because, folk think if you talk how you talk. I'm also, so some of the things that I've worked on here in the city is anti-racism and implicit bias training. And that came under the leadership of Chief Moreau. I've worked really closely with him in developing a lot of that work. And so I always smile when, Reggie and other family members in the community talk about that, because we focus our treatment on being very holistic and African-centered for our people. And it benefits the whole, because if we go back to a communal concept and the village concept, it benefits everybody. So yes, I am Isis Bay. All those letters, there's a bunch behind my name. It's just whatever, the letters to function in this system. And I am a nationally certified advanced level trauma specialist. So I've been consulting on work on trauma, transgenerational trauma, generational trauma, complex trauma. I am a certified gang specialist. So at Stonewall Jackson, that was my work. I was overseeing a $6 million federal gang grant that we received for the state and oversaw 3 counties, a lot of that work as a gang specialist and actually a coordinator admin with the state of ensuring that those services were implementing, auditing, all that great stuff. And I'm not from Charlotte, but when I hit the ground running, I came to Charlotte and that's what we did. Created several programs, actually, which is still there to this day at Stonewall Jackson. I wrote a proposal back in 2008 for an African drumming program, which is a rites of passage based on social conditioning and evidence-based of social learning and African-centered work, and using it as like rites of passage, life skills development with our family foundation, Obey Foundation, which is a nonprofit. And we brought in this cultural program to the center where they not only learn traditional rhythms as a way of healing using music as therapy, but they've also made their own drum. We brought authentic dashikis and they will present to their community and go home with a $200 drum. And actually we brought in an Emmy Award-winning production specialist to come in and record it. So each youth that participated, they had to trade their gang affiliation, put down their colors and put on dashikis, white, black, Asian, didn't matter. And they went home with the $200 drum, their dashiki and their recorded CD and skills to be able to take into the community, be able to make money. And it's still going today. They tried to remove it because my name was attached, but when they seen how valuable it is, the state said, I think we want to bring that back. So today, Drums for Life still operates there. From they wonderful things. We get so many great things. So from there, I moved into the child welfare system, in which, because of my anti-racism work, my goal was to be a system sleeper or disruptor, age change it. My goal was to keep 100 brown babies from entering the system. I 202. So I moved on from there and went into the extreme trauma work. I have a history, former school principal, consultant, human trafficking specialist, did a lot of consulting work here in Charlotte with human trafficking, working with Chief Monroe. And again, with all my training, I went into trauma work and since have been focusing on that, domestic violence specialist. And so all those great titles says that I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a trainer with the North Carolina Board of Social Work. So I train, I'm a faculty with Charlotte AHEC, do a lot of trauma consulting. I do a lot of consulting on ethics, on anti-racism, implicit bias. That's one of my biggest work here in the community, is doing a lot of implicit bias trainings with structural organizations to dig in to some of that stuff to start the process, what I call the healing journey, which is unlearning and learning. Talking about, so my graduate work is all on systemic disparities. And that's kind of where I kind of hit the scene with all of my work and research as far as systems disparity. And that's where I work closely with Chief Monroe and bringing that work to Charlotte. And so I left the county. So I've been with the state, been with the county. So I'm very well known. Actually, the grant ran out. So the state actually gave me recommendations to be a consultant in the area throughout those years. Baba Reggie told you, I met him. We've done a lot of work throughout the years together. And so the other work that we do is our nonprofit, our foundation, which is Obey Foundation. And we use Drums for Life as that healing tool as well. So that's one of our major partners where we've done the drum work that I told you about, some of the gardening projects he's talked about. So we partner a lot, where Drums for Life and Obey is actually a partner with the county, the city, library, parks and recs. And we've been offering free African drum healing circles for the past 4 years to the community. So we utilize a lot of that cultural work in the healing that I do. So as a licensed mental health therapist, we use the drumming work and we bring that healing tool. So we've given away at least thousands of dollars of free instruments to the community. We create the instruments, we sell them. Obey Foundation has sponsored Harmony to give away 20 free raised garden beds, because gardening is a tool, therapeutic tool for grounding and using it. So we partner for that. We've done all kinds of scholarships. We do yearly annual resource where we bring free community resources to the community, free book bags, free school supplies. So our latest through Harmony Health, so I founded Harmony Health. I'm the founder and owner. And through Harmony Health, we provide a lot of, and if you do a search and research in the community, they're private practice mental health agencies are known for making that money. we are community-based. That was what I said. If we're gonna do this work, we're gonna do the healing work because the focus is on healing, but we're gonna be community-based. So in that, I developed the Community Connections Program for Harmony Health, in which we provide free and low cost mental health services for the community, focusing on our people first, but it's open to everyone.
Okay.
The challenge is that because we're our for-profit, we don't get funds. Baba Reggie knows, I've talked to so many elders and communities like, why is nobody funding it? Half the time it's because it's Isis Bay, because Isis Bay has a mouth and Isis Bay speaks up and advocates. So folk is like, no, I'm honest about it, but what it is, and my focus is on healing. And honestly, the funds we've done is my fundraiser. It's just from, I was like, okay, nobody want to give me money. I've written several grants. You don't give me money? I'm raising myself so I can support the community. And that's where we've been. Baba Reggie has contributed. I support the community. Most organizations in the community could say Isis Bay or Drums for Life or Harmony Health has supported them in some way. We just don't get that support back, but that don't stop me. We do our own fundraiser, and whatever it is, we go to giving free mental health services. Okay. I get people asking me all the time, why do not people? I said, you got to ask the people. Okay. I'm going to do what I do. So that's our work. And
thank you, Mama Bay. Thank you so much for the powerful introduction. And so mask and mental health, particularly in relations to COVID.
Okay. So mask, I'm not a medical expert, so I can't speak to mask as far as COVID, because I don't have any data as far as regarding being medical experts and stuff like that. I know it's the law. We wear them. We want to protect people. I can't speak to mental health. What we're seeing with mental health is what I've called, one of my workshops is called America's Dirty Little Secret. Okay. It got exposed. And what we see is we haven't talked about mental health because we live in a very individualistic society, born and raised. We don't see how the body connects, the mind-body connection. And oftentimes when we talk about trauma, the unlearning and learning, we teach people the mind-body. So we got the dentists over here, the doctors over here, the mental health people over here, the physical gastro, and we don't communicate because it's an individualistic system. We don't teach people that all these systems work together. And that's an African tradition. That's the connection, that you don't separate the one. And here we do. And now we're talking about systems of care and integrative care is late on the market. That research has been there. And so we focus on that to talk about how does our emotions and what we're feeling manifest in our physical bodies? And how does it impact our physical health? And so when we're talking about COVID, right, we focused on the physical health, the physical symptoms, everything that, and we expose, the whole perfect picture of the white picket fence and the house and the dog and that everyone's happy, right? Well, COVID showed that most people aren't happy. What we saw was what we thought was a rise in domestic violence cases. No, it's always been there, but now we exposed it because folk have to stay home. And what we know about trauma is that triggers, and it's a symptom called avoidance. So if we work hard, we go to work, we get out the house, we can escape, we can go here, we can go there, we can avoid our pain that's been unresolved there forever. And this has forced us. Now children's abuse cases are going up. Well, it's been happening, but children can go to school and avoid seeing all the bottles of can and all the abuse and the fighting. They have an escape, which creates dopamine, just like any other high. And the same thing with just unhealthy, toxic relationships. We have a chance to get away. We come back. We don't have to say much. We got in late. We can just do the mundane, the American dream. This is what they say. This is the status quo, because we're not happy anyway. And we never really dealt with our past traumas and pain. And so now we have to face it every day looking. And so even in the media, healthcare workers, teachers, the maintenance workers, we see all these people that are getting called out. And us mental health workers was like, are we not first responders? Where's the mental health people? Then it was like, oh, that's right. The doctors and the nurses and the first responders, they need free mental health care. They need people, they need therapists to show up. We're like, oh, hey. So that even tells you that we don't even see mental health as a first response, as part of our physical health. And oftentimes when we say mental health, the stigma that comes to it is, well, mental health is just like physical health. It's not. You can have poor mental health, good mental health. You can have poor physical health or good physical health. But just the term, there's something we've done with the term mental health that alone means something, and it's just mental health. And so we haven't really addressed it. We talked about it. And what we learn in systems that we have, which have not been dismantled because they all been set up to benefit groups of people, is that a system works just fine. And what we learn is that a system of oppression is to focus on the problem. So we look at the dead fish, look at this system, the dead fish of drugs, the dead fish of war, the dead fish of mental health, the dead fish. We don't ever look at the water and see what's wrong with the water. We don't go upstream because the system's working exactly how it's supposed to. It's not broken. And that's what it looks like in mental health. And with COVID, the physical health, but most of this, if we were different here and we were more healthy here and all those pains and unresolved, then our system would be a lot healthier. Our immune system would be stronger. A lot of the psychosomatic, which is the physical complaints, the headaches, the stomach aches, and all the stuff would be different because now the stressors increased, which increases the psychosomatic, which increases our blood count, the red blood counts. So now our immune systems are compromised because we know that stress and emotions compromises our immune system. Doctors will tell you that after years, and you get all these, well, if you reduce your stress, you can strengthen your immune system. And we're like, thanks. So it's yes, sir.
So I had a question for you, Isis.
Absolutely.
So to your point around some of the things done with Chief Monroe, I'm assuming there were some policies tied into mental health availability in places where we experience trauma, or potentially working on some things to make those things available. If you think about resources we have available, we have folks on the phone in the banking industry. We have folks on the phone who have access to certain places and spaces. We have folks in the medical profession or in regulatory spaces as well. Knowing that we had these type of ears available, what exactly can be done, or what was done or in place that needs to be improved upon? Because to your point, the pandemic has exposed quite a bit, right? The shortcomings, especially in our neck of the woods, and especially as it relates to males, quite frankly, because we're not dealing with the trauma, and we don't generally tend to take advantage of mental health anyway, at the level that we should. What would we be able to make available? How should we be thinking about it? How to get to solves at this point, knowing what we know, and potentially based off the things y'all had back in the day when you were working with Chief Monroe?
So I could say back then, what I've learned being in the system as an admin is what I found was a very not effective process was the same folk who had the big names, not the people who's doing the work, is all the big name folk were getting all the dollars and not doing the work. And being in a system, learning that, you know what, these are the ones, okay, let's make that personal phone call. Hey, you guys, we got this grant coming out, but yet we know they're not doing the work, but it's like, we got to get this money spent very quickly. And so I've seen a system, just my short time in Charlotte, so I can't speak to, but from my experience, I've seen that the same people that get the dollars and they're not really touching the work, or if they're touching it, it's events, it's speakers, it's lectures. It's not really getting put into services and quality services, right? We know who's doing the work and who's not. And a lot of services, if you talk to, oftentimes us experts and the people, it's always the top-down approach. We don't go into a community and say, what are your needs? We say, oh, based on this, these are your needs. We don't talk to the people. We don't talk to those that we're trying to serve and listen to them. So those dollars are, there's a lot of resources, but they don't go to the people that need them the most. And we're still seeing that today. Like there's 4 or 5 major resources in this Charlotte community, and they're screaming out, we can't get them money away. And I'm like, well, I'm over here because I got the people. We just had 13 referrals 2 days ago. But it is no, because what? Somebody else going to get the credit. There's other ego. Instead of let's work together. That was Chief Monroe's big thing is I'm tired of you asking me for money. Why don't y'all come together? And that's and I still see that today. It's that I want the credit versus, listen, this is my lane. That's your lane. This what you do? Then here you go.
So to that point, for folks who would be interested in that work at, as an example, I work at a bank,
Got it.
and we do quite a bit in the community, right? As banks
Yes.
are wont to do, reinvesting as best they can. To your exact point, we vet as best we can what
Right.
we provide, but it could be going in places where waste creates more
Right.
waste. And we also have employees that want to donate, right?
Right.
Like myself, I do quite a bit from a donation-based perspective where I may not be able to provide the time. I also want to make sure my money's not being wasted,
Right.
going into the wrong place. How or what's available to me to make sure that I am investing in the right spaces that's going to enact the positive change I'm looking for in the community?
So I understand at the top level, I usually look for the results. You know, I talk to the people. So before I got into I opened my practice. So we are one that you're going to see results. We don't have a high recidivism rate. You can talk to, I can't tell you who our clients are, but even if you just follow, like just saying, like doing like more ground research, if you followed our pages, you'll see clients all over. And I tell them protect their confidence. They don't care. They're like, no, go over there because I'm doing the work, stuff like that. But when I was a CPS worker, I went to the agency. Give me a tour. I want to see. So when I looked around to see where my clients was going, I looked to see if there's anything that represented them. Was the space conducive? Was it trauma informed? And then I educated myself. Before I became a trauma specialist, what is trauma informed and what does this look like? And then I looked at the spaces to see if they were even set up like that. If I send a client, would they even feel comfortable? I didn't tell them who I was. I didn't tell them I was the CPS worker. I just walked in as if I was a client. And the way they greeted me and the way they moved me through, I was like, oh, I'm not sending my clients here. Because we're actually touching the ground versus in the piece of paper. Because I can write, if I'm a great writer and I hire somebody to write really pretty for me, then it looks really pretty on paper. So I touched the ground. It's oftentimes just as, you know, I'm a new client, I'm interested in your services and da-da-da. I let them walk me through. And it's touching the people.
That's impactful. Thank you. And that's helpful. The one thing which was interesting relative to mental health that Reggie, you had talked about as well to offset this was when we talked about the masking, right? I think from an African American male perspective, you had heard that what percent was not interested in the vaccine when it was set to come?
Yeah, there was a recent study that said that over 50% of adult Blacks who said that they would not take the vaccine.
That's right.
And of course, when we give the context, you know, medical apartheid, Henrietta Lacks, euthanasia, the sterilization programs, the syphilis studies.
That's right.
And I'm in public health. And so I understand the history there. And merely marching out Black doctors and Black nurses is probably going to be insufficient. And so certainly from a public health model, from a public health standpoint, the mitigations and all of that is going to help. Even the personal responsibility, to your point, you mentioned the strengthening of the immune system, you know, vitamin D, vitamin C, the B complex, doing what we can to get our immune system stronger so we can throw out whatever, be it COVID or whatever else that comes down the pike. But there is a lot of distrust out there, Brother Cecil. Your point, there's a lot of distrust out there with this medical system. And certainly, you know, as we look at white paper and policy, to what degree we're able to get more Black people even having insurance, healthcare insurance. People are still uninsured.
Absolutely.
And if we wait until we are incredibly sick and got all these heavy pre-existing conditions, and it's playing out with the deaths, obviously, and the illnesses.
So, and I'd like to pose a question to Mr. Carruthers. who works in the corporate structure. And I know, Will, you've most likely been home since the pandemic started, predominantly, but I know there's quite a connection, the number of connections that you have as well. And especially with the folks, because you're in a different segment line of business. What are you seeing and experiencing as it relates to how this pandemic, from a mental health perspective, how has it been impacting the African Americans that you've dealt with, the males you've dealt with in your corporate environment versus others?
That's tough to answer because given the line of business I work in, there aren't very many African American males.
Sure.
So that's a separate, and because I know the line of business you're in. So I can broaden that out to just, some individuals that I have personal relationships with that are professionals in all different industries. Some mental health experts, people that work in school systems, and it's been very taxing, to say the least. And I will say, on several occasions, I've had friends personally say that phone call, if I picked up the phone and called them, or a group of us are on GroupMe, just sharing stories and talking about different things, that has enabled them just to sustain since this pandemic started. I can tell you personally, I probably would have lost my mind if not for my friends. Just being able to have Zoom calls and GroupMe interactions. And it was in part because I found out my wife was pregnant in January. So we're dealing with the pregnancy in the middle of a pandemic. And, my wife's considered high risk because she's pregnant. And then we've got the whole stress of, well, she can't get sick. So I've got to, do all those other things on top of my 8-year-old daughter being homeschooled. So that's what I would say, a fortunate level of stress because I could be home because of the nature of my job. But when I think about some of the other people that their jobs will not let them work from home, or they may have lost their jobs, the amount of stress that can put on a, and I'm speaking for men, I don't want to discount women in their experience. I'm just more, go ahead.
I got a question. We used the word mask, and certainly, Mama Bay, you could have done anything you want with that. But, mask is a metaphor for a number of things. I recall back in early March and April, when cities first started shutting down around the country, there were a number of places where young Black men would go with these masks on, and they were not received very well. I want to know what some of your thoughts are in terms of how you all were received in your respective places, especially if you got the mask on, sunglasses, and a hat. I mean,
Right.
But how were you all perceived with the mask?
I'll just respond. I'm 6'4", and I'm a pretty large man, so I'm usually received with apprehension. Sadly, it didn't change much. Especially given the demographics of the area I live in. So it what you would expect to happen, continue to happen. I didn't have any negative interactions with law enforcement or been asked to leave any stores or anything, but just, that look,
Anxiety.
the changing of direction, moving over the aisle in the grocery store, the stuff that sadly we are accustomed to.
Brother Wilson.
Yes. I'm doing like two things at one time. You had to ask me the question again.
We were talking about how back early, and probably in many cases still, where Black men would wear their mask, and sometimes they would wear the mask, with the neck covered, the sunglasses, the ball cap, and how many not only non-Blacks, but even many Blacks would feel quite uncomfortable clutching their purse a little closer, walking a little faster. And And did you have any experiences when you wear your mask? Any misconceptions? Any?
I didn't. I actually haven't had any negative in that aspect of it. The only negative interactions I've had with this are the people that, the anti-maskers, like, why are you wearing a mask? You scared, you scared, stay home, that kind of stuff. But, not many people try me like that. But, you had a couple of people, little comments here or there. But no, I never had any. In fact, I remember going to the bank I go to Bank of America as one of my banks. And I was at the one on Freedom Drive.
Hear about that, Cecil?
I talked with the security guy. Well, they give me a better deal. I move. I got 3 different banks. I like put my bank in one money. All my money in one bank. But I went to one on Freedom Drive, and me and the security guy was joking. Said, "You ever think you see a day where a black man can walk to the bank and they mad if he don't have a mask?" So
Right.
it was just like, man, that's like the most 2020 thing ever. Like you a black man in the bank without a mask, like you causing problems. So it was just a different thing. But I haven't had a negative, claim that anymore. And when I was just a regular black man, walking around with no mask on, walking through a park. But none of the mask standpoint.
Okay, thank you. How about the others?
Baba, 2 things shows up for me that I'm listening. I'm like, wow, such a powerful, when you already talk about Black men and mental health and some of the things that Brother Will was talking about. So one, when you talk about stressors, right? We've already been walking around with anxiety in this community. What people gonna think of me, how I'm showing up, is my tone. And I have a lot of Black male clients that talks about his anxiety he's already anxiety through the roof of the pandemic, right? And now him being a big Black man, everywhere he go, he feels somebody's looking at him, trying him. He wanted to just walk through, because he lives in prominence, he's an ex-NFL. He wants to walk through the community and say something. And I'm like, sir, we creating, but it's all of it, right? So now let's just talk about that. What you said was so important about you had the means, and all of these families that don't have the means, right? So you already are taking the stress. Now let's talk about the stress from prior to that, your grandmother, your great grandmother, and transgenerational trauma, that stressors and this energy is passed through the DNA. So now we're talking about why our disparities are different, why our physical health is, because we already carry this stuff from past generations, and we don't even realize that we're born with a dysregulated emotional regulation because of that. If you can't, I think you would love, it's called Unnatural Causes, because it speaks to exactly what you said. You said something like, I don't know if you can find another brother in my department. And Unnatural Causes talks about how racism already impacts us. So as we climb that ladder of success, we have less people that's holding us up to look around and see that looks like us. So the data analysis, or all the data that they captured, showed that this woman who was the VP of the hospital had worse health conditions than the poorest white man without a GED. Just because that was internally impacting her. She was successful. They could not figure out. So Unnatural Causes is a great documentary to speak
When the
to
Vow
that.
Breaks. Yes.
Yeah. I would like to add that racism is the original pandemic.
Absolutely.
And so I know that we're discussing COVID and wearing masks. But that's a very good question. And I almost forgot about March and April and how we looked and dressed at that time. I know for myself, I didn't buy any masks. I thought I'm just going to go get some scarves out of the bedroom and we're going to make it do what it do. And in pictures to my family on a Saturday before I was going to the store. And they all said, you can't go to the store like that. They said I look like the Taliban. So I just said, you know what, well, maybe no one will bother me. And I had no problems. I didn't want to be bothered. And I walked in and walked out. But I also know we started this before we really started the conversation. I'm a 5'3". So I'm not intimidating to most people.
You're the opposite of Will.
I'm the opposite of Will, right?
Taking in our booths, you know.
Right. But I can tell you that my younger brother is definitely taller than I am. And he is in Charlotte, and his locks are waist length. So, and you can only imagine him going to the store with a mask on, locks waist length. Most of the time he keeps them up. I don't know if that's just because it's more comfortable or to be more approachable, but on most days he doesn't care what people think about him. He's going to walk and do what he go through the city as a Black man. But I definitely know him and his girlfriend did a lot of online ordering for groceries during that time. So again, it does put them in another category of being more fortunate to be able to do that. Whereas the group that we're really talking about are impacted and can't necessarily navigate those same systems.
Cecil, I want to go back and address your question because I had a thought, especially as someone mentioned the metaphorical mask. So, you know, we're in the midst of COVID, then George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all these things happen that just add on to the just everyday stresses of life. And I found myself, just given the structure of Bank of America, just to give you some context, within the finance organization, at my level, I'll say there's 7 African Americans, 6 are men. So now this is the highest level of finance within the bank. There's 6 of us. So now as these things are happening and we have more junior people that work with us, we then have to bear the brunt of having the conversations with them and taking on the weight just to be there for them as a leader, to show up day in and day out. And not only that, you have to then take what you're hearing from these people, translate these feelings, and be able to communicate with your non-Black counterparts and leadership to help them understand that, first of all, our people are not okay. I'm not okay. There's a larger issue here. And, you know, these things aren't happening in a vacuum. We need to do something. And it weighs on everyone differently, but that is what I say, the metaphorical mask that I had to assume within the workplace, given everything that was going on over the past, 8, 9 months.
So Isis brought this up, and extremely powerful for me relative to the mask that we've been wearing. I'd say forever. I'm born of an international family. I came over as a kid to the U.S. and even amongst our own, we had to deal with, you know, some form of a fight, for lack of a better word, for your place, for your safe place. I've experienced from all different segments of that. And then I, of all places, ended up in the banking industry, which you tend to find you got to put your big pants on, right, to deal with some things that you're just going to have to experience. It's about 30-something African American banks in the United States of America. If you're not working at one of those, you best believe you're not easily going to end up at a top of the line C-suite type role. It's expected, unfortunately, is what we've come to understand. So you have to internalize that and push that down when you go in. And I'm in many rooms where I'm pretty close to the only African American in that. The sense of diversity is not necessarily growing in that particular space. From our perspective, it's not necessarily always the case, but you prejudge quite a bit as an African American male. No doubt about it. We tend to think people are more apt to discriminate against us before we meet them than not. And unfortunately, you tend to find that that's actually not the truth. So we project quite a bit, and I do that as well, unfortunately. And unfortunately, it's because of the experiences I've had. I had to do the exact same thing from Will's perspective. I was asked by my team to opine on the George Floyd situation, and just, you know, why and how does that hit us? Now, this is while COVID is happening at the same time, where I'm fearing for my family on what's happening from that standpoint. And we're also looking at this thing, and quite frankly, on a day-to-day basis, when we experience that, while COVID is going on, you thinking, man, can y'all at least give us some chance to live in this? And even then, no. And we've gotten to the point of where we're tired of being tired. People say that, and it's so cliche, but it's true. And where I came from in Africa, it ended up being a coup to overthrow the government because people were so tired. They'd reached a point where they had been pushed so far, they couldn't take it anymore. And we saw that growing, even as a child. People were murdered, years of war happening. And unfortunately, the US is going to that space. Racism dies with a loud bang, just like it did with apartheid time frame. Taking all that into consideration, you talk about our DNA being built. We grow up with this. Little slights here or there. Me walking in a store in a suit. And one of the reasons I dress the way I do, the places I end up in and what have you, is not always because I'm a clothes hound. I am. I love those trappings, but some of this is a defense measure. So I am not bothered. And that's the sad part about being an African-American man in America, not even a Black man in America, is some of this is armor, because we have to deal with the BS, unfortunately, on a regular basis. Now you put COVID on top of that and recognize that I can't protest you killing me by kneeing on my neck. But if I'm okay to go and protest with those that want to be an anti-masker, hell, the police is going to protect me. If you look at that, that resonates with it. And we're seeing that on a consistent basis, and that's not okay. But unfortunately, we recognize that to be a truth. So you take all that, and I'm having to now explain to others in an area where you can't rage out like you want to. We have to put a Band-Aid on it to say, I need to articulate this so you feel my pain without being offended. And unfortunately, we live that life quite a bit in corporate. We don't get to cry, right, in those settings because that may be seen as too emotional. And it's sad, unfortunately, Isis, to another point you brought up, because it's the little things that resonate with me, and somebody put a little slide together of two things, which was, who here has been spanked by their parents when they were a child? You got that butt whooping. And when you were getting that butt whooping, you were told, what were you told? Stop all that crying, men don't cry, right? So okay. You confused as hell.
It hurts me more than it hurts you.
Yeah, right? I love you.
I was actually told,
speaking my language now.
I was told stop crying before I give you something to cry about.
I give you more.
So you take that as an African-American, because we accept the fact that we're going to get spanked in our household if you act up. Mm-hmm. You need to be checked. And you grow up with the thought process of you can't cry. So when we wonder why African-American men aren't going to therapists, you don't want to have somebody else see you cry your emotions out there. And you take the fact that we get beat down every day. One of the things that impacts me is less about all that, because you've come to expect all the things that are happening today relative to police kneeling on somebody's neck till they pass away. We see it, and people just don't seem to care. Knowing that I'm in a profession where there's little to no chance where I'm ever going to be at the top of the food chain. And it's not because of how qualified I am, it's because of this. It's because of this. That's how simple and stupid it is. But you have to let that power down. The thing that is most distressing and depressing to us is how COVID has exposed the hypocrisy of what we live in and we have to deal with every day. Because at the end of the day, I get to see government officials who are allowing the most corrupt system at all create laziness to a level of degree and lack of empathy to a level of degree and hypocrisy to a level of degree that I can never, ever relish in. But I'm told, get over it. We're told, remember 9/11 forever. We get that on 9/11 forever. But when the minute I mention any type of racial injustice, you need to get over that. How many years are we past that?
Get over it, buddy.
But yet it's still, you're told to dance and explain what you're going through, not to make me feel better, because none of this is going to make me feel better. I have no power. We talked about this in the prior call. I have no power to make those changes. I think Will brought that up. I have no power to make the necessary changes that need to occur to ensure that I'm treated as a man and equal, as a human, right? But I need to explain to you, make sure you're comfortable to ensure that I'm okay by experiencing yet another debasing of me just simply because of this. But you're okay.
Oh man.
From that standpoint. So when we talk about the mental health impacts of what's here, there's levels to this that can't be explained. And the sad part about it is, and I own this because I haven't been to a therapist from that standpoint. I get therapy out of groups that I've formulated with gentlemen where we can go out and just go to town on the issue in a safe space. But therapists would add on to levels that it needs to from that standpoint of help. But it's been coded in us, quite frankly, and this is where we need to own it as African-American families, where it's to be soft, even as a child, is not seen as okay. And that is such BS to where we debase ourselves on a consistent basis. And Will brought this up on another call, Carruthers, that we have some of the most toxic people we look up to that are African-American. That cause us
Tell it.
to go down
Tell
that
it.
path.
Yes,
So
sir.
when we talk about things that we need to solve for, there are programs we need to take advantage of. There are things that are available to us, but we've got to do some self-reflecting and fixing. And when I asked you that question around Chief Monroe and what's available, is understanding what's available to us and how do we get that connected in the places before we're so broken that we can't come back. Unfortunately, we know a lot of folks that are too broken to come back with the help that we need, that we think is surfacey.
Just one second here. Just one note here. A group called, this is a foundation, a funding organization called INGAP. I don't know if you all are. It's a new generation of African-American philanthropists. These are Black philanthropists, and this is led by Valeda Fullwood and some others. We got a grant from them. In fact, this is the second grant we've gotten from them. We got the original one back in 2010. But I so respect what this group of Black leaders have done, in that they're looking and seeking to fund specifically Black-led, but also Black benefiting organizations. And they're trying, because they understand the dichotomy and they understand the dynamics of how some of these foundations and some of these funders, where they look at, you know, these funding models and decide who they're going to give monies to, and people like you, Isis, who are very focused on our people, and you're very clear about that, and you've been very, very consistent. And because you may not fit their model, as well as perhaps other programs, they may not want to fund you. But it's important that you know, while we may go through the United Way, Foundations of the Carolinas, and those typical models in which we give our funds through, that it's important that we look at grassroots organizations like yours and invest our money, because it goes directly back into it, and it doesn't have to be filtered through some of the larger foundations like United Way, Foundations of the Carolinas, et cetera.
Can I piggyback on that real quick?
Yes, sir.
Because this goes back to a point that Will Carruthers made on the last call, and Will Wilson and he and we're going back and forth on. This is the equivalent where we keep donating money to organizations that get whittled down before it really hits the true purpose.
Yes, sir.
Is the equivalency of us making it and moving out of our neighborhoods, right? We make it, we move out, we never go back and buy the block. Right. And we wonder why our schools are underfunded, our hospitals are underfunded, et cetera.
Come on now.
Keep money to organizations that are not necessarily going to end up in the places or at the dollars that we donated. But the problem is we do not, to the point that you just made, you just referenced the name. I have no clue what you're talking
Me neither. I've never heard of them.
So we need to figure out how to get those lists available to where we can. Now, I'll give credit to where I work. They do a really good job of identifying sub-organizations, and Chantel does a lot of work in that space as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're paying attention to it as we should, because there's so many that you're hit with. If you don't do your due diligence, you're out of scope, right? Relative to your pocketbook and your time, because that stuff is finite, quite frankly. So, and I'm sorry,
is there a one place where, for example, I know there's a website called Shop Black US, and it's all things Black that you can find. Is there anything that is around some of the topics that we're talking about, where it's health and wealth, that is maybe centralized to our region or just North Carolina? I think region would be would actually be better than just the statewide.
I haven't, the closest I've seen or to the social media stuff is like Charlotte Black Owned Business, or the Black, like they've been really focused on kind of collecting dentists, doctors, mental health. It's not extensive, but they've been trying to put forth this effort of that's kind of been the go-to for the community. It's like, hey, I need a landscaper. Hey, I need a doctor. Hey, I need a mental health therapist. You know, so that's the closest I've seen to the social, is that social media outlet and platform. Because I go there often to say, hey, we're accepting clients as well when they look for doctors or dentists and hygienists. And I do refer people there. That is one. I want to really go back, Cecil, and just dispel a myth. So when you're talking, I'm like, you all are speaking my language right now. And it's something you said, I need to dispel that myth of there's nothing we can do. That is the issue. When we talk, what you spoke to, your experience of coming here is called internalized oppression and self-hatred. And it's so deep that we do believe we have no power. You said we have no power. That is not the truth. We have to, it's just like trauma. We have to unlearn to learn, because when we take, it's the same cycle of gang intervention, the same cycle of human trafficking, the same cycle of domestic violence. Oppression is an abusive cycle. And it goes through the honeymoon, the tension, and it's the same treatment model. And what you said, we have a surge in Black men right now in our organization, and it's just the education. It is like Naeem Akbar, breaking the psychological chain to saving. When we do this trauma work, it is the same thing. We are unlearning, helping them to take their power back. Because when everyone's talking about this anxiety of I was called in to do all these workshops, NC Black Professionals Group, doing this, doing that. And I was like, I have a heart, because I don't have anxiety. I didn't have anxiety through COVID. I didn't have anxiety through the election, all that. They said, why? I said, because I don't have those changes. I live in an oppressed society, but I don't walk with the internalized oppression. And it's an unlearning process. It took 30 years to get here, but we're doing that work. And it's exactly, when you said solution focus, that's exactly what we're doing. We're not focusing on a problem. So we walk those through the community with a lot of education. We're helping them to understand, no, you do have power. I do this implicit bias work. So what Will is speaking to is all of our implicit biases, and they show. When I help people, when we talk about what's weak, I said, well, we continue to talk about, I'm gonna speak for those that don't have a voice. That's a damn lie. We all have a voice, whether it's heard or not. We have to change our thinking. We have to unlearn this oppressive thinking, because when we take our power back, then we believe, because the whole brain science, what we think and believe impacts how we feel. How we feel impacts what we do. So we're not going to show up as much because we don't believe we have the power to show up, and we're afraid in these spaces, right? It's the same thing when you talk about broken. Our agency, we don't teach in brokenness. We're not broken. There's just pieces. So we say, welcome to Harmony Health, where we help families put the pieces back to their puzzle. A puzzle can't be broken, it'd be taken apart. Sometimes pieces are missing, sometimes we need a new piece. So just helping them to understand you're not broken. Trauma is the response to these devastatings, right? So you talked about George Floyd, all this stuff, it's intentional. So when we teach people that, turn that ish off, because it's just like the overseer. It's to show you to reinstill fear in you over and over and over and over again, to keep you in your place, to centralize and to appeal to your ego and your emotions, because you have not healed them. You have not done that unlearning and the healing. So they use that systematically. We're watching it on TV. We have access now. We have this, we have that. It's the constant reinforcement that we don't have power, that they'll kill you anytime. Because when we take our power back, we're going to move differently. We're going to be more self-sustaining. We're going to be, and because I've done that, I have my own food. I grow my own food. I do this. So them taking that stuff, I'm like, well, we got food in the backyard. So we shut down, we prepared. And that stuff changes what we feel, the power. And that's the healing process.
And just to piggyback on what you're saying too, where they would terrorize, traumatize, and instill the fear. I remember, and we're thinking about, George Floyd and others, and even some of the young babies, but you all remember a little over a year ago when the biggest, the blackest, the strongest of us, the football players, the NFL players, when the president said, you all are sons of bitches. And, if you don't stand for the American flag, you're sons of bitches. And so he didn't go after the little ones and the females that they typically, he went after the biggest, blackest, strongest one and scare them. And so that's a part of that whole making of a slave, Willie Lynch concept, where you go after the strongest ones and you make an example of them in the presence of the others, and the others will be afraid. So we got a few minutes, right?
But we're at the top. We're a minute away
Okay.
from 9. This
Okay.
has been incredible dialogue. Just very powerful. I wanted to comment, even though I'm not a Black male, I've raised a Black male child who's not a child anymore. He's 24, and he lives in Florida now since September. In the middle of COVID, they moved away. But one of the things that I was thinking about as you all were speaking, he was in college in Boone, and I was really excited when he told me he was in therapy and that he sought his own therapy, and he knows that I have a therapist. And, Black women have the same trials and tribulations that we're talking about the men, but we go through it too. And it's a whole nother dialogue conversation. As many times we're the only ones in the room as well. But, when you are raising a Black male child in this society and the things that have evolved throughout this, the great things when your kid initiates that dialogue with you and talks about these things that are going on in the world and has an articulate opinion, but understands many things that I couldn't have possibly taught by myself, surrounding him in a village of folks that he can pick up the phone and call a Cecil and, have a conversation if he wants to. And knowing that that support system is there, I think is the key in our society, is supporting people and not shaming them for their mental health issues or saying you can lean, and developing those strong relationships. I know Cecil does a lot with his groups, and I have my circle of folks that might pick up the phone and say, I just need to chat, and create that welcoming environment where I have a friend who lost his son a few years ago, and we chat at least once every 3 months and we have real talk. And so, that support system has to be there in our community, in addition to the mental health resources. And it's just not easy for anybody right now with COVID, but it's also not easy when you don't have that opening to have the conversation, which I think is a key for many of us.
But I think also, I agree with all of that, but I think also as Black men, we have to show our vulnerability, unsolicited. Because sometimes, we work really hard to build these big, strong brands and build this notoriety and build these audiences. But we have to be able to tell people, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay. Like, I lost a friend to COVID last week, and Cecil saw the post I put. I talked exactly about how I felt about it. He's one of these anti-maskers. We served in the Navy together. We argued every day from March until Saturday before last about masks. So, and then, long story short, we found out he called me from the hospital, and he died. He died 5 days after he got diagnosed.
How old was he?
Huh?
How old was he?
45.
Wow.
Picture book of health, ran marathons every month, whether he's competing or not, ate vegan, all the comorbidities, didn't have any of them. He was the poster boy of health, but he was one of these people that if you want to stay in the house, you want to be scared, I'm going to live my life kind of thing. But when he called me and we talked, one of the last things he said was, I wish I had listened to you. And as much as I want to be sad, I was more angry. And the more he said, man, I should have listened to you, man. You were always saying, right, you're this. The more I talked, the more angry it made me. And it wasn't a time, so I just kept it inside. I'm just like, I don't want to hear this shit. Don't sit there all of a sudden now because you've met your mortality. Now you want to all of a sudden be like, oh man, I wish I would. No, because 72 hours earlier, we were arguing about this. Decision, now you don't want to deal with the consequences. So I didn't have a chance to be sad from it because I was so angry because you had a chance to do it. So I went on Facebook and I just put it all out there. The anger, how I felt about it, how I felt about people who don't mask, all of it. And it was really surprising the amount of people who send me private messages like, man, I get tired of it too. It's so exhausting. It wears me out. Like, I feel like I'm just ready to just give up. The things that are just pulling at people, they just talk to people, just talk and just be honest with people to open up those doors. Sometimes you just need that first person that they respect to say, you know what, I'm not okay, or I'm angry, I'm not whatever. And then people feel like, okay, now I'm not alone. It's like, you know, Cecil, you put on events. Some of you other ones do too. I don't know, 'cause I don't really know you as well. But after you get that first sponsor, the rest of them roll on. It's always hard to get that first person to give you money, then the rest of them give it to you after that. I think it's the same thing with this. Once you go speak at an event, once the first person answers a question, then the rest of them start answering. I think sometimes as men, especially ones of us who have notoriety or some level of brand or whatever, we've got to be able to say, you know what, I'm not okay, or I'm angry, or I'm sad, or I'm hurt, or I'm scared, or I'm confused, to give people cover. We about politics all the time, giving political cover for people to come out and they feel comfortable doing.
So true.
So one of the things Kim brought this up, and this was so spot on, and I don't want to go past it, which was we leverage our social media platforms for so many different things. What we don't do is label. So she asked the perfect questions, which is, and Isis, you talk about Buy Black, which I'm on that site as well. It's a lot of advertisement for things that we can purchase, clothing, things along those lines. But there is nowhere that explains the programs that are available to us outside of United Way and others, that says, you're in Charlotte, these are the folks that are doing the good work that could use your help, that if we went on a social media platform and could find, I guarantee you we could have donations met that way. And the question is, where do we go to set that up? Who is the person that can set something like that up in those type of platforms? Because those are the places where a lot of people are gravitating today. Will does quite a bit in that space, and you get people who respond, are looking for content. But to know that we can't find that type of stuff, where Reggie's referencing like 4 or 5 places, and nobody has no clue what he's talking about. We know the big boys,
Right.
because we have access to it, but social media is a place where we need to stand something like that up, especially in Charlotte, where those hands are needed. Like, where would you go to do that?
This is a book they published a couple of years ago. It's called Giving Back. And again, these are Black philanthropists.
And you put that book on a social media platform, I guarantee you have more people tying into it. And that's the challenge with some of these things. They're in places where it's the way we market, right? Will Carruthers and I have come up with this. It's the way we market our message. And unfortunately, we are not marketing that message effectively. Because I guarantee you, some of the things you heard today while we're on this site right now, we had no clue about it, and would love to know where we go to find that to actually donate or participate as best we can.
Right, but part of that is a deal. These organizations, they're still living off. They're on Facebook 2008, not Facebook 2020. The algorithm changed. Facebook did exactly the way they do. They got us hooked on the drug, and they pulled it back. Now you want it. Now you got to start paying for it.
Sure.
So now, if I post something of my 5,000 whatever Facebook friends, whatever, maybe 200 is going to see it organically.
Right.
They want you to pay to play. Mm-hmm. So if you want people to see, if you have an organization, it doesn't cost you a lot of money. You can reach 1,500, 2,000 people with $5. Mm-hmm. But they need to start putting out the money. You got to pay to play. You want people to hear it. The market is oversaturated for organic reach. Organic reach on Facebook and LinkedIn Facebook and Instagram is dead. Now you got to start paying, paid sponsorship, paid ad. You got to do it. But if you got, if you want to have an organization trying to raise some money, spend $5 a day on an ad. Because you can micro target to the point where you say, like, I just did an ad from, I said a 1 mile radius from this address. Mm-hmm. And you can do that all over the place. You can micro target, geo target to the demographics, male, female, white, black, whatever you want, even to the point where you market against what their interests are or what industry they work in. You can do this kind of stuff, but these companies, these nonprofits need to stop going, well, I'll put it on Facebook. I post on my Facebook, but you got 250 Facebook friends. Most of them don't see it. They don't really care because they're drowned out by all the rest of the stuff. You've got to start paying to play. We can't play cheap. It takes money to make money. It's a business. A nonprofit, no matter how charitable and heartfelt your goal is, it's still a business. You need to market your business in the space where people are looking. And if you don't start, it doesn't matter. Exactly. You had the prettiest ad on the planet, but if you're not marketing anybody where people can see it, it's just wasted. You're the best kept secret in nonprofits, which means you're going to go broke in less than 3 years.
Oh, sorry, you
No, go,
paused.
go.
No,
No,
I
no, go
was
ahead.
gonna just make that's all true. But I was thinking about what Cecil, the question you and Kim posed. Nobody's created it. That's why it doesn't exist. That's really the key. Is that if somebody found it important enough to create that, every now and again, Pride Magazine, the Charlotte Post comes out with lists of the people they know and the people that they come into contact with. And between this market, there are so many people out there, as Sister Bay commented on, doing the work. I mean, I had to hunt for a Black therapist, hunt for a Black female therapist my age when I
Me
was
too.
looking for a therapist.
I had
And
to
then, yeah, and then a Black psychiatrist. I mean, I had to be very specific, but there was no place for me to go and have a list without scrolling through all the white therapists. And, so when I think about what you all are asking, it hasn't been created.
Well,
Nobody felt compelled to create this list that we
Well,
know would be great. Go ahead.
do you remember the Green Book?
Yeah.
I think I do.
Okay, well, the Green
That's what
Book.
I'm talking about. I'm looking for the equivalent to the Green Book.
Well, the Green Book came out of segregation,
Mm-hmm.
forced segregation, where the cities, municipalities, counties, and states all participated in this, and they all enforced it. But this Green Book was that they recognized, and this was based on, a movie was based on some of this too, with a brilliant pianist. If you get a chance to listen to this brother, his name escapes me, brilliant musician. But anyway, so this Green Book was a directory, a national directory that if you're Black and if you're traveling, it listed the safe spaces where you could go for restaurants and bathrooms and hotels and mechanics and places like this. And so, the Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Central Park, and all these other places where we've heard about massacres and stuff like that, it is rooted in Blacks were being self-reliant, self-sufficient, and we were forced to depend on each other. So this Black Book, though, was a directory where it listed all of these Black businesses. And of course, our monies were turning over and over and over again before it left the community. So there is a precedent there, and I'm sure it can be redone again.
Well,
William, you spoke about the advertising. Oh,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, so we do that. We do it a lot. What I find interesting is that with our mental health fund, even with it's not nowhere near where we've been looking. Like our goal was 50 grand. We might have gotten 5 or 6, and we're splitting it with a couple of us partners. But what I found very interesting is something that speaks to what Baba said and Cecil, is that the majority of our donors on there are white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few Black donors on our list of mental health, which is interesting. And I'm like,
that's by design.
It's like
some of that is self-imposed. I mean, we got to own sometimes when we're not seeking it out, searching it out, looking for it in that particular space. Some of that is self-imposed, and that's the Will's point that he brought earlier. We got to get out of our own way sometimes, because if it's out there, when we don't see it on a casual cursory search, we think it doesn't exist in some instances.
Right.
At that point.
Yep.
The other thing that, from Will's perspective, though, as well, is the question around how it's marketed, the marketing plan that's pulled together, right? And folks not recognizing, in some instances, as simple as using Facebook as a platform, and I know that's not the only platform, but
Right.
it amazed me just how inexpensive, because I'm a marketer. I've come up through
Right.
marketing management is my background. The cost per acquisition is always what we worry about, right? How much does it cost me to win your relationship over and what you bring at the end of the day? That's the number one, that's the number we're working towards with net present value, all this other stuff. When you look at how much it costs and what you get to set up, I'm surprised by the lack of a constant marketing campaign that can be leveraged in that way, because it does what you're going to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars to another firm or somebody there locally to get you that we can do on our own. From that standpoint, is creating and marketing. in many instances as well. So sometimes, even outside of what we have granted out, the cost based off the return to net out for that wide outreach that you're looking for can be really worth it if we're leveraging those platforms in that way with a campaign in mind as well from a creation-based perspective. That what Will says hit me because I had a chance to leverage it and find some of the immediate returns that I was looking for relatively inexpensive spend.
So you guys are on this level, but do the people on the ground know that? Do they have this education, this awareness? Are we doing it so that when we talk about solutions, it's not just funding, it is, are we investing our dollars that we have, the means and the privilege and the reason, are we investing that into these org like us and our grassroots to say, let me give you this inside tip? Because that's what we do through our community connect. We bring this free information to the community, how to find a therapist, how to interview therapists, whether you come with us or not, we don't care. But this is how you find it. This is how you interview. This is how you change your mind as Black men. And this is what's happened to you through your learning. And then they're like, oh, well, can we come here if you want to? Because it's not the goal to come here, but it's to give you this information to go out. And I think, well, who has that information to know to do that? Like, we can say that here, but who has that?
That's what we're trying to solve for you.
Right. Well, the short answer to your question is no. But also, we got to, at some point, there's the old Chinese proverb, starving man wait long time for roast duck to fly in mouth. We can't sit there keep waiting for people to go, who's going to show us where, who's going to show it. We can Google some of this stuff. Maybe not all of it, but some of this stuff we got to be able to Google it. But to your question, Ms. Bay, you said about do we support? No, that's a problem we have across the board with us. You know, I told Cecil this a few weeks ago, and this is still true to this day. I have more white lesbian clients in Charlotte than I have Black non-athlete men.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Now,
Right.
it's not that people don't know who I am. I went from a point, and this is what happened because there's Facebook Black Charlotte, and then there's Black Charlotte.
Right.
With Facebook Black Charlotte, they want me to show up at their parties and take pictures with them.
Right.
They want to tag me and stuff. But every time I see them, I need to come see you. Some of these people have been telling me they need to come see me since Obama was running the first time.
Right.
But every time they see me, or they'll try to pimp my brand against what they already wearing when they talk to some girl. They want like, oh, this we make the best suits, blah, 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 knowing that she's gonna think, oh, he must make his suits. And I got hip to that game and said, oh, if I'm that good, when are you gonna start buying from me? You ain't gonna sit there and leverage the work I put on to try to get somebody draws off my work when I spend money with me. But those are the kind of issues that happen. So at some point, if we don't start working together with each other, you know, supporting each other and not looking for the hookup when we do work with each other, we're not going to do this. We can have all the meetings, conversations, dialogues, think tanks and stuff we want to. But at some point, people, they have to want it. My mom used to say, I can show you better, I can tell you.
Right.
We can talk about stuff all day long, but at some point, we got to actually put the work in. We can't keep saying, where do we find this? If you can find out who Beyonce date, you can find out when Beyonce going to have a tour date, when Jay-Z going to have his tour date, when the new Off-Whites are coming out, when the new PS5 is coming out. You can find this, you can find out some of this other stuff that we want to know. We gotta stop at some point, we gotta stop talking about it and start being about it.
And Brother William, I just want to, I'm with you. And I'm only going to challenge that when I talk about implicit bias, internalized racism and oppression. Because when we forget that, that's when that we don't buy back the block, we've arrived. And we forget that the people back there, and it comes out of some privilege. We have to remember, right? Because my mind is here. We talk about internalized racism and oppression. If this is what I believe, I'm not worthy. And this is because oppression says that these material means I'm status and power and all this. So that's what I go for. If I haven't unlearned that, and that's how I'm feeling, I'm going to operate out of that. And only a few of us have unlearned and did that work. So we say, oh, y'all don't understand, but we haven't taken the time to help teach them that, because sometimes we speak to them and it's speaking, we're not speaking their language. And I don't just mean like vernacular. I'm talking about communication, speaking to the people, having them understand, and that's taking the time, and it takes patience because oppression happened over so many hundred years. It's gonna take that, and that's that internalized stuff that we've been taught that status and power and this stuff means that exactly what you're saying. These things mean I got something. So I'll sacrifice my rent money to do this for my kids because it means something, versus understanding, well, I can take that and invest it into the new stock. I'm not thinking that way because of internalized oppression in self-hatred. And so
No,
I take that healing work to get there.
No, I totally agree with you. I agree with that. But we got to find somewhere. Sometimes it's in the gray. Because I agree with you, because some situations where like you're saying, like we have that implicit bias and things like this that we have, and the other terms, I don't remember all the terms you use, but I agree with them 100%. And then we have the other side here. And sometimes it's in the middle, but at some point, accountability has to matter. At some point, it has to matter. Now, but I also believe in the law of accountability. I can't hold you accountable for things you don't know. I hate okra. I cannot stand to eat okra. I will never eat okra. There's no way you can package it in a manner that's going to appeal to me. I love peanut butter. You can give me almost anything with peanut butter and I'll eat it.
I thought you was in the country, bro.
I
knew that was going to say.
You don't eat okra?
No, you give me okra, I'm going to puke all over your house. But the thing is, we have to find what appeals to people, and like I said, meet them. Like Ms. Bay said, you got to meet them where they are. But you also have to hold them accountable once you get there with them. I can sit there, you can give me all the excuses you want, and they may be valid excuses. So I'm not saying they're not valid, but at some point you're gonna say, okay, well now you know, which do you choose to do? Are you going to choose to stay here? Because if you're willing, I will help you as much as I can. I will help you, but I won't do it for you. I can make you a plate, but I can't make you hungry.
That's right.
You make an excellent point, Brother William. In fact, and there's no daylight there. I think if it's not rooted in self-reliance, self-determination, and being self-sufficient, and these are values I'm sure that Brother Isis and many of these other organizations not only profess but practice, and that's why they've been able to stay in business in spite of not being able to get the kind of funding. And so they understand they got to do it. I mean, the work is necessary, absolutely necessary, and they got to do the work whether they get the funding or not. So they're out there using their own money, spilling their blood all over the place, you know, to make sure that these people get served, that our community and our people become served. So I agree with you, brother. It has to be rooted in accountability, self-sufficiency, personal responsibility, and all that other stuff too. So good point.
And if I will, I ain't trying to hog everybody, I apologize, but I want to make sure I say this. We also have to understand these are all businesses, whether you're nonprofit, for-profit, they're all still businesses. Sometimes it takes a while for that business to take off. Yes. You're looking for that one person, that game changer that you meet, that one donor, that one reference, that one resource, whatever it is. You may be in business, 10, 15 years before you finally get it. Then you meet it, next you know, you blow up. Now everybody gonna call you overnight success because they didn't realize when you was like the little red hen. You was planting the weed, you was watering the weed, and you did all this stuff. Then all of a sudden you got the bread. Everybody like, oh girl, you got that bread. Let me get some of that bread.
That's right.
I'll bring the butter, but you wouldn't bring the shovel or the water when I was trying to grow it.
Right.
So that's a lot of problem. But sometimes the Bible says, don't despise humble beginnings.
Yeah, the little red hen. It's a great story.
Little red hen.
Right.
The Bible also says, do not grow weary of doing good.
That's right.
And it could be a struggle. It could be really tough doing that because
we live in a fast food, instant gratification society. That's the healing. We haven't learned that. So gratification, yes.
Right, but part of us are at fault too. Like I can say, as a successful entrepreneur, I talk to entrepreneurs all the time. I'm like, and I go speak to these kids at these schools. I go tell them, I say, this is hard work. Entrepreneurship is a hard, difficult, lonely job. I'm good at it. I love it. I'm born to do it. And every week I tell them, I'm gonna give me a job. But people walk around with this. They give people like this God complex, where they tell people, one, they minimize them with terms like, well, I wouldn't trade my time for money, or I couldn't work for nobody else. And that's the biggest lie in entrepreneurship. Yes, I work for somebody else. As an entrepreneur, I work for my clients. The only difference, if Cecil gets fired from his job, but Wells Fargo will come to me and say, hey, Cecil, we no longer need your services. Don't come back tomorrow. If Cecil fires me as one of the guys who makes his suit, I'm not going to know till Cecil is buying clothes for everybody else. See how you do suits. And he ain't called me one time. Like, dang, Cecil fired me. That's the only difference. We get all these we set entrepreneurs who don't know, we set them up for failure because we give them a false sense of what we're doing, what our lives are like. So sometimes we call it a microwave instant gratification society. No, because we try to show we show them, we act like we walked in the door, we said, hey, I'm William Wilson, buy your suits from me, and they did. Because they don't, but I try to tell the story of when, you know, people who look like me, who I try to go after first, were the ones who didn't mess with me, and the white people did. I try to tell them the story so they understand. But we have a responsibility. The Bible says, "Who much is given, much is required." I have a responsibility to talk to the young kids, the young entrepreneurs, whomever it is, to say, look, this is hard. This is hard. It can be done, but it's hard. Understand it's going to have some failures, and it's okay. If you fail publicly, it's okay. I tell them I fail a lot, but so to kind of give them a basis. But we have to do that too. We have to set a reasonable expectation for the people of the things that we're trying to do. But we don't. We set them up for failure because we do them a disservice because we know how hard it is. We can sit there and be cheerleader. I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not interested in being a cheerleader, nor am I interested in being a life coach. I want to educate you so you know what's going on, so you walk in with your eyes open and you can succeed because you're not, if you hit that first road bump, you're not discouraged because you thought you're going to walk in and everything going to be just beautiful. So we got to take that responsibility as those that are, you know, trying to help grow or help educate or help give therapy to and things like this and know where our lanes are.
So we have hit, which is amazing because of the conversation, about 26 minutes past. And what I want to do, if anybody has any last second thoughts they want to add in, before we do that real quick, I just wanted to remind everybody, this is a part of a grander conversation. The Made Men is conducting additional research and interviews with administrators, both national and regional, around things that we can do to pull together in a white paper for consideration with this new administration around how to create some change in these particular areas that we're focused in on. We had our initial conversation around equality and racial justice, and now around mental health in light of our current state. And we want to thank Ice Bay for attending, talking us through some of the things that we need to be aware of from that standpoint. Some of the great dialogue that we've had around things that we need to consider from a mental health-based perspective, some of our shortfall, some of our opportunities, some education as well, some great points that are there. And I think one of the walk-away items that we have is how do we create some type of directory that addresses things like mental health, that has it easier to find in platforms where we go for leisure, right, as a destination platform. That is something that seems like it needs to be built upon to give us great opportunity how we market that message to get more eyes on the prize. So that is something hopefully that will be pulled back in from a Made Men perspective as this conversation is being recorded. Before we turn it over to Reggie to close, anybody have any other last minute thoughts before we get into that? Brother Reggie, floor is yours. I think you're on mute.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you. We're going to go and close with the Harambe chant, and Harambe is Kiswahili. It means to pull together, to work together, to pull together in the same direction around the same time. And Jomo Kenyatta made it real popular when he was a Kenyan leader. He would oftentimes lead and close his meetings and sessions with the Harambe chant. And I'll ask you all to raise your right hand. And with each chant, and we'll chant 7 times. And each time we'll pump that bad boy up. Good strong chant, good strong pump. Sister Chantel, big black fist. All right. All right, so 7 times. And then on the last one, we end with a lot of energy. Please, if you have young babies, don't wake the babies up in the house or scare the wife. But on the last one, you want to end with some real nice high energy, okay? So the first one, hands up. All right. Harambe. 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 Harambe.
Thought that was
Hey. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Sister Mama Bay, for your powerful session, your holistic spiritual sessions with us. And we've covered a lot of ground in these two sessions, covered a lot of ground. And I really look forward to getting to know each of you better too. I've seen Cecil do his thing for years. And so it's great to be able to get him as you know, and abort both of the wheels as well. And Sister Chantel, and looking forward to seeing Sister Isis more, and of course Kim Caldwell as well. So powerful group. So we'll be on tomorrow. Brother Cecil, do you want to share a little bit about what we should expect on tomorrow?
Absolutely. Tomorrow's conversation will be based around economic empowerment by African-American males with this pandemic in its current state. What can we do to improve upon our current state? What are some things that we need to think about, whether it be policy changes, other things that we can potentially do to have a positive impact on where we are in this true pursuit of the life, liberty, and happiness dream that we're told about. So that's our conversation tomorrow. Will be at 6 o'clock in the Zoom virtual session. Looking forward to it. David Knight will be on talking us through that.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this session. Thank you so much.
Great job, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my email in the contact chat, so you guys
Awesome.
have my contact info.
We
Absolutely.
need to be in touch with you, Isis. Great
Thank
meeting
you.
Thank you.
Peace and
Yeah, for the 5.3.5, is that what it was? 5.3.5.
blessings.
Don't forget it either.
She's scarier than I am.
A little bit. It's a little
Kim
bit.
doesn't have to have.
They do say that. It's a little bit.
It's a little bit.
Hey, my mama 5'1" and she still scare me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what my
You
children
really do.
say. They like, it's all right though.
My mama scare me and I pay her bills. They still scare.
Oh, that's real.
That's what
That's
they do.
real life.
Right.
Talk to y'all later.
Please
Good night, guys.
send me your email, and then I'll make sure I respond to if you have any other additional questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Peace, Baba.
Great job. Thank you. All right, Mom.